What does a Half-Life map look like? That's a very loaded question. After all, we have 3 distinct eras of Half-Life to choose from in plenty of different contexts. You might be thinking of a deathmatch map, a campaign map, a custom map. Depending on who you are and which era of Half-Life you call home, a map can look like anything from this to this. But me, personally, I'm Looney Tunes, okay? I'm out to lunch. I'm buck wild. To me, a Half-Life map looks like this.
3, 2, 1. The time is now. The time is now. The time is now. The time is now. The time is now.
Automatic diagnostic and announcement system.
I genuinely don't have any idea where to start explaining this map to you. As you can probably tell by the visual aid on screen right now, this map is unapologetically just weird. Doing research on the creation of this map to try and make it make more sense and make it less weird only made its existence more weird. But before I can explain each and every fucked up facet of this map, I first need you to actually understand this map. So without further ado, allow me to take you on a guided tour of the utter insanity that is DM Spookface. This is DM Spookface. As indicated by the DM in its name, it's a deathmatch map for Half-Life 2 and Half-Life Deathmatch Source. As weird as it may sound, you might be surprised to learn that Spookface is one of the more popular maps for these games, especially when it comes to Half-Life Deathmatch Source. Spookface is a bizarre little arena with tons of underground rat tunnels, areas of elevation, secrets, and unique design choices that make the map just as insane to play on as it is to look at. There's personality stuffed into every single corner of this map. It might genuinely just not be possible to find an area that isn't filled with weird shit. The bizarre use of non-Half-Life textures, random pictures of this guy, and an entirely unorthodox approach to deathmatch mapping makes it really unique. Your eyes might be looking at this map and feel assaulted, but it really isn't as complicated as it looks. We'll start from the outside in because, frankly, it's just easier that way. So first off, the map is surrounded by these displacements in the 3D skybox that look bad, with some weird brush trees off in the distance. Then there's this little marble walkway here that surrounds this pool full of water. This part of the map is accessible and you can walk on it if you want to, but it's more or less completely removed from the rest of the map, and considering you can't Tau Cannon jump because there's no Tau Cannon, it's probably not a good idea to go over there. The outer area is effectively useless, but it does a great job at making the map feel bigger than it actually is. After all that outer area nonsense, we come to the real focus of Spookface. At first, thanks to the repeating stretched marble texture, the map looks really confusing. In reality, this area is pretty simple to navigate and understand. You have the ground level part of the map that you probably want to avoid, and then you have elevation where the most actually engaging combat will be taking place. Heading below the surface though, we come to the part of the map that, despite rarely being explored during deathmatch games, is probably one of the more interesting parts of it. These little rat tunnels are busting at the seams with weird secrets and quirks. This video would be way too long if I explained all of them in detail to you, and also it would just ruin the fun. One of my favorites though is this weird scripture-like thing on the wall that plays playgroundmemory.wav from Half-Life 2 when you activate it. Now that you have a basic idea of Spookface, you should also know that there's been tons of edits of this map over the years. There's Spookface 2, which as far as I can tell is completely unofficial, Spookface Reloaded, which again is unofficial, and also various edits of Spookface that make it either more or less accessible. There's nothing particularly different enough about a lot of these edits to talk to them at length, but Spookface 2 expands the amount of secrets tenfold and adds these weird catacombs to the map. I can't imagine this is any fun to play on. Spookface Reloaded sacrifices some of the map's unique quirks for the sake of gameplay, but also takes the spider texture from the original Spookface map and makes it crawl around the map, and I mean that's just cool. Historically, Spookface has been a shared space between HL2DM and Half-Life Deathmatch Source. It's most certainly more popular in Deathmatch Source, but I've seen people who have their own memories with it from Half-Life 2 Deathmatch. Most of the time when I cover obscure maps like this, I without fail get people who tell me that they don't remember this map, or that the map is not even popular and I'm just making shit up. Spookface doesn't really fit that bill. Sure, it's certainly not what you think of when you think of a Half-Life map, but there is undeniably a cult following based around Spookface online. And how couldn't there be? It's such a perfect blend of weirdness on a map that's actually fun to play on. You don't think you've played Spookface before. you know if you've played it. To further drive my point home, just look anywhere in the Half-Life Deathmatch source community and you're bound to find references to Spookface. Even this random map I was playing on for fun had a Spookface reference on a computer monitor. People really do love this map. So, after seeing how weird this map is, most people, myself included, would probably wonder who could be responsible for such a strange, trippy creation. Whoever made this map had to be just as spaced out as the people who played on it, right? Luckily there was a contact email tucked away on one wall of the map, but come on now, this map is so old. The chances of that email actually still being active were pretty much zero. Still, with this being the only lead I had, I decided to type up a short email to the person listed as the creator of the map, knowing full well my email was probably just going to end up in some long abandoned inbox. I hit send on my email, waited anxiously for a little bit, and then I somehow got a reply. I got a reply from none other than Spook himself. My original plan was to bother him with boring interview questions about the creation of Spookface, but before I even had the chance to ask him anything, he had filled me in on just about everything I could have ever wanted to know. Spook told me tons of interesting things about Spookface. He told me the exact texture CD he had gotten all of those weird textures off of. He told me that it took him 7 hours to render the original Spookface map, and he told me that he was now 65, still loved to create things in video games, and still loved Half-Life. If I can be real with you, Spook's email was just awesome. Knowing that someone is still a Half-Life fan 20 or so years after they first left their mark on the game is a unique kind of joy only present in the Source community. Spook and I continue to exchange emails back and forth, with me trying my best to get as much information about Spookface as humanly possible. It was at this point that Spook started mentioning dates and sharing trivia that didn't really make much sense to me. It sounded like he was talking about a Half-Life 1 map, not a map made specifically for Half-Life Source. I had always known that Spookface was a port, as it so loudly proclaims itself inside of the map, but I just figured that it meant it was ported from Half-Life Source to Half-Life 2 DM. Just looking visually at the map being made for Half-Life 1 makes it make much more sense. The problem was there was absolutely zero information online about a gold source version of Spookface, and some places outright denied it. I combed through Google, asked around in the community, and nobody could point me to the so-called original gold source version of Spookface. But while sitting in a call with a friend of mine, we made a huge discovery. We discovered not only that Spookface actually was originally a gold source map, we also found what may have been one of the last remaining downloads for the original version of Spookface on the entire internet. Of course, in a very in-character move for this map, it was hosted on the shadiest looking website possible. I decided to download the map regardless, making sure there weren't any nasty EXEs or something included in the zip file, and dropped the BSP into Half-Life 1's directory. I booted the game up, fully expecting to be greeted by more or less the same Spookface I'd always known, and was instead greeted by this. It was strange and alien, but at the same time it was also super familiar. This was 100% it, the original gold source version of Spookface made for Half-Life 1. I was suddenly inside of the map that I couldn't find a single screenshot of, or mention of, online. I was inside of a map that 10 minutes ago, I figured didn't even exist. There are immediately a multitude of differences. Perhaps most obvious at first is the big wall that encompasses the entire map, as opposed to the big pond that surrounds the source version. Maybe it doesn't translate well to the video, but it's hard to explain how much these walls change the vibe of the map. Despite the actual play area more or less being the same size, it feels much more cramped and catacomby. There's tons of subtle, minute differences here that all add up to a completely different experience. This map very weirdly uses the Half-Life 1 cliff skybox, which completely changes the context of the map and frankly just looks out of place. All the original textures are still here for the most part, which reminded me that Spook had given me the exact name of the texture CD he had used to make this map. But I couldn't find a download for it anywhere online, and I'm not spending $70 on a texture CD. In general, the map felt just the same amount of weird as the source version, but the gold source version was far more eerie. I think the fact that a wall encloses the map results in really dark, shadowy areas that are naturally just pretty spooky. All the non-brush-based models from the source version are gone for obvious reasons, and lighting on the map understandably looks entirely different. One weird quirk is that there is a Tau cannon in this version, but it's noticeably absent in the Source remake. I guess whoever ported this map was just tired of getting one-shot killed through the wall. I was super excited to find this nearly lost version of Spookface, and I was certain there was something hidden away inside of it that was also worth exploring. I decided it was a good idea to send the map to someone who knows much more about Half-Life Deathmatch than I ever will, Patbytes. Patbytes gave me a few useful bits of information and more Spookface lore, and perhaps most interestingly discovered the fact that the name was actually originally called Sniper. To me, Spookface and Spookface's source version represent a strange time in Half-Life's history. A time where people were uncertain about the future of the community, and the new engine brought out the best in people. It was also a time when Half-Life's source was seen as the mark of a new era for the series, and not just the butt of every Half-Life related joke on the internet, ever. DM Spookface clearly had a lot of care put into it. Quicksilver, the guy who did the port, could have just lazily ported the map from gold source to source, but he went the extra mile and put his own touches on it. Touches that, while some might consider overbearing and untrue to Spook's original vision for the map, gave Spookface a cult-like status. It's insane to think that had this website that was hosting the original Spookface gone down, it might have genuinely just been lost to time. Which kinda makes me think about other classic maps that we take for granted, whose original versions might be slowly disappearing from the internet. Well, that was just about everything there is to Spookface. I appreciate you joining me on this journey of what is not only one of my favorite Half-Life maps, but also just very well may be one of the weirdest maps in Half-Life history, in more ways than one, clearly. Thanks to Richter and Pat Bites for helping out in this video. Without them, this video would be like 5 minutes. Also, thanks to Spook for talking to me about this map. Speculating on old maps is one thing, but talking to the original creators is really just something else. But actually, before I go though, I'd like to issue a couple of small addendums. Firstly, it turns out there is a Tau cannon in the source version of Spookface. You just have to go through tons of deranged steps to find it. Thank you to this old guy who stopped shooting at me during a game, so he could specifically show me the secret. Thanks. Also, I discovered Quicksilver's website only after recording the script for this video. To reiterate, Quicksilver is the guy who's actually responsible for getting Spookface up and running on Source, and considering his impressive catalog of maps, there's a high chance that you've seen his work before. According to his website, he worked on Spookface 2 and Spookface Reloaded with Spook, so I guess those are official. I've been Ratlobber, and you just watched me explain the story behind an old-ass Half-Life map for way longer than you should have. See ya.
Everyone says that
Sorry, not
Osama
to
bin
interrupt.
Laden's dead.
Osama bin Laden is dead. USA has body. That just hit
What?
the
What?
news right now.
We fucking did it! Yeah!
Yeah! Yeah!